Long enough to cover the subject and short enough to keep it interesting. Welcome to Out of My League. I'm Nick Diaz. Think about the best job you've ever had. What was the best job you've ever had? And why was it? I'm not talking about pay and where you were living and all that stuff. I'm talking about your day-to-day happiness doing that job. What was the best job you had, day-to-day happiness? It was either because you liked the job that you were doing, or it was your boss or bosses, the people that came from the top down you enjoyed being around and you enjoyed working with. See, there's quality of life, versus pay. Do I want to get paid a bunch of money but be miserable at my job, or do I want to be really happy with my job but make a little bit less? And who you work for establishes that quality of life. You get to live in the best house in the world, the best street corner, get the highest paying job, but if you have a shit boss and you're living in that beautiful house with an awful significant other, then you're probably not happy and you're miserable. And the only people who know this in those specific situations are people who've lived through that situation or have had that job experience. So The Athletic posted a poll of 100 plus athletic directors, coaches, and staffers, administrators, what have you. And they asked them, what's the best job in college football? And their top 5 was as follows. Number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Georgia. Number 4, Texas. And number 5, LSU. Horrible. How could Georgia be number 3? Bama's not the best job. They just have the best coach. Well, Texas hasn't won shit in a decade. 15 years. Why are they even in the top 5? And my answer is, I don't know. I don't know what kind of questions they were asked. I don't know the exact criteria behind it. But what I can see, looking at the list, are patterns. Okay, let's look at Georgia. Okay, so they haven't won a national championship since 1980. Fine. But let me ask you this. When was the last time Georgia was bad? I'm not talking they were 7-5 or 6-6 for 1 year. I'm talking bottomed out the way Tennessee has for over a decade plus. When was the last time Georgia did that? What about Ohio State? When was the last time Ohio State bottomed out consistently? Matter of fact, Ohio State has had 5 6-win seasons in 60 years. Since 1950, they've had 5 6-win seasons. LSU, well, yeah, they bottomed out like Tennessee in the 90s, but LSU in the last 20 years, well, no one's been more consistent than them except for maybe Oklahoma, and LSU has more national titles. Okay, yeah, fine, Georgia hasn't won since 1980, but they just weren't hiring championship-level coaches. They weren't hiring horrible coaches either, because the job is that good. You're more about consistency. I guarantee you're more about consistency. Let me prove it to you. You're an athletic director today, and you had to hire one of 2 coaches, Ed Orgeron or Kirby Smart. Which one do you hire? Well, Coach O has a ring on his finger, but Kirby Smart has, say it with me, consistency, which is what Georgia has had. And it's because they've made consistent hires. Because their bosses are consistent. When you ask, 100 plus coaches, 100 plus athletic directors, 100 plus staffers, administrators, all that stuff, you're asking them, I'm going to move across the country with my family. I want guaranteed consistency. Now that coach may get fired if you want to get over the hump and they don't win a championship over time because of the expectations, fine. But if you have good bosses, you'll make consistent hires. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have won more Super Bowl titles than the New Orleans Saints in the last 20 years, 2-1. Yet who the hell thinks in here that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a better organization and a better job than the New Orleans Saints? Nobody. Why? Because the New Orleans Saints are more consistent and they have better bosses. All right, so what about the programs that were left off of the top 5? Notre Dame, Michigan, the Florida schools. Historical consistency. Recent consistency with even some of them. All right, fine, but in the modern college football, you have to have 3 things to be considered a great job because the world has changed. You have to have 1, a great in-state recruiting. 2, you have to have not a huge academic hurdle for recruits to qualify to get into your school. And then number 3, you have to have a lot of money that you pay for assistants and facilities. Notre Dame has money, but they don't have in-state recruiting, and the recruits they do get are limited because of their academic hurdles. Michigan, same thing as Notre Dame. The Florida schools, well, you got great recruiting and, no academic hurdles, but they have a lot of money that they don't spend, and Miami doesn't have any money to spend. So why isn't, say, Texas higher, or USC, or Texas A&M even? I don't know why. We're splitting hairs. Maybe I'd have USC higher on this list, but I have a theory as to why these guys didn't vote USC, Texas, or A&M higher. And it's because a voter in the article was quoted and gave an explanation on their voting process. They said why they didn't even have Bama as a top 5 job in the country. And they said, I feel like Alabama is the best job, but once Nick leaves, they will go back to the same meddling political stuff that they dealt with prior to him getting there. I think for a head coach, you have to factor in your ability to freely do what you think is best, and I don't see that at any SEC schools except Bama and A&M with Jimbo. Without Jimbo, same A&M. Meddling, political stuff, a.k.a. you have bad bosses, boosters, athletic directors, politicians, and those motherfucking board of regents. You know why Texas isn't higher on this list? I'll tell you why. For that exact reason. Texas, to me, is the Roman Empire of college football. Little history lesson with Uncle Nick. So I remember sitting in history class, world history class, when I was in high school, and I remember learning, about the Roman Empire, the Greeks, and all that stuff. And, I remember learning that historians, why did the Roman Empire fall? What happened to the Roman Empire? And historians, actually, they don't really know. They don't really know why it fell. There's no one particular reason. Some of them have reasons, but they all disagree and vary. But what they all agree on, and I'm getting to the point here, what they all agree on is that the Roman Empire became too big and too damn powerful for everyone to succeed because everyone wanted a piece of the pie. Just like Bama, ever since Bear Bryant, except for Gene Stallings and Nick Saban, great employees to overcome bad bosses, just like USC in the 90s before Pete Carroll, and then after Pete Carroll. Texas, same thing. The coach before Mac Brown, all the other coaches they've had since Mac Brown, and the exception of a few great Hall of Fame coaches, they have bad bosses who are too big, too powerful, and want a piece of the pie. It's too damn big and too damn powerful to consistently succeed unless you have a great coach. If you don't have great bosses, though, you will suffer and be inconsistent. Therefore, it is not a great job. It is amazing to me, however, that LSU, during the reign of 2009 to 2019, during the athletic director Joe Alleva and the president chancellor fuckface King Alexander, that during that time, LSU had 2 average coaches in Les Miles and Ed Orgeron that went to 3 national championships and won 2 of them. I mean, that's the argument for LSU to be number 1. I don't know if they are. Personally, my vote is for Ohio State, the best job in the country, for the reasons I just gave about consistency and bosses and all that shit, plus the competition in the Midwest. They're all academic schools that don't have as much money, and they have horrible in-state recruiting. And just like LSU, Ohio State is the only big boy in town in a top 5 high school football state for recruiting. That's why I have Ohio State number 1. Plus, the 5-6 win seasons in like 50, 60 years, that's just stupid. So yeah, I would personally put Ohio State number 1. But more importantly, when was the last time Ohio State was just bottomed out bad? Like Tennessee bottomed out bad? They haven't. Just like Georgia since 1980. I haven't won a national championship since 1980. Yeah, well, here's my argument for that. Before the 2002 national championship where Ohio State beat Miami in that controversial pass interference call in the Fiesta Bowl, you know what it was Ohio State's last national championship before 2002? 1968. But we look at Ohio State as the top job, but not Georgia during that whole time. Look, not everyone can hire championship-level coaches. Not everyone can, get Nick Saban to leave the NFL. Not everyone like Clemson can just fall ass backwards and get lucky into Dabo Swinney. Good bosses find consistency from top to down. That's what makes a great job. There's no one best job. It's whoever's in charge. and there are some jobs that have been more consistent than others. Thanks for listening to Out of My League. If you like what you heard, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, or follow me on Twitter and Facebook in the description link below.